Have you ever wondered why you felt older on the inside, even when you were young on the outside? Why did you look at life with a depth that other people didn't seem to understand? Most women try to blend in, to become what the world expects. But some souls carry a different rhythm, and no matter how early they learned to adapt, a part of them always felt like an observer rather than a participant. And here is the strange question most people never ask themselves. What if the reason you never fit in is that your soul does not belong to the same age as your body? Carl Jung believed that certain souls come into the world with memory, intuition, and emotional wisdom already woven into them, as if the unconscious has been traveling far longer than the current lifetime. These are the women who sense things they cannot explain, who feel emotional weather changing in a room long before anyone speaks, who see patterns others overlook, who carry questions most people do not dare touch until much later in life. They have always been different, not because they tried to be, but because they were never meant to be ordinary. Perhaps you were the child who preferred quiet corners over crowds, who felt deeply without understanding why, who observed adults and sensed things no one said out loud. Maybe you felt older than your friends, even when you were only 8 years old. Maybe you remember sitting at family gatherings trying to understand behaviors, dynamics, emotions, and unspoken tensions long before you even had language for them. If that sounds familiar, ask yourself something few people dare to ask. What if the depth you carry did not begin in this lifetime? Some women carry an inner knowing that cannot be traced to personal experience. They hold empathy that feels ancient, intuition that arrives like memory, and a kind of sadness that is not depression, but recognition of the human soul. They are not impressed by superficial victories, social competition, or the constant chase for approval. Instead, they search for meaning, truth, and inner peace, even when they do not know why. Jung described this as the collective unconscious, the ancient reservoir of human experience that some souls have greater access to than others. And maybe this explains why you have always felt like an outsider among people who seem content with surface conversations. Why does chaos sometimes feel strangely familiar instead of terrifying? Why silence feels like home? Why your heart responds to music, art, or certain people as if they were memories rather than new experiences? These are not random feelings. They are signals from something older within you trying to be remembered. So before we begin, pause and ask yourself, have I always known I was different, long before I knew how to explain it? If so, this video is not going to show you something new. It is going to help you remember what your soul has been whispering all along. Why do some people seem to be running a race you were never interested in joining? While others chase titles, applause, and outward achievements, you've always found yourself asking quieter, stranger questions. What if this isn't the life I came here for? What if success, as it's defined by society, is not aligned with my soul? These are not questions born of laziness or lack of ambition. They are the whispers of a deeper awareness. Because for the woman who carries the soul of many lifetimes, achievement without meaning feels hollow. She cannot force herself to chase something that does not sing to her spirit. In today's world, success is often mistaken for purpose. From an early age, we are told what matters: climb the ladder, earn the praise, hit the milestones. And yet, if you are an old soul woman, you may have noticed that even when you tried to follow the script, something inside of you resisted. You may have looked around at the world of comparison, competition, and performance and felt quietly disillusioned. Not because you couldn't compete, but because you saw through the illusion. While others were focused on building a resume, you were searching for a reason to wake up that didn't feel like pretending. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But this journey of becoming is not one of external markers. It's an inward descent into the symbolic, the mysterious, and the invisible threads that connect your present life to your deeper psyche. Jung believed that our souls carry the memory of a much older self, the self with a capital S, that does not care for status, but seeks wholeness. And wholeness often requires loss, solitude, and even disapproval from those who only understand surface-level success. That's why, to many people, your life may appear like you're falling behind, when in reality, you are falling into alignment. You may have changed careers not to make more money, but because your spirit felt suffocated. You may have walked away from a stable path because your dreams no longer fit inside it. You may have sacrificed your reputation in order to feel peace. To the outer world, this looks like failure, but to the inner world, it is the first step toward freedom. The old soul woman does not measure her life in trophies, but in truth. Her milestones are not awards, but awakenings. Her fulfillment does not come from applause, but from resonance. So ask yourself, when was the last time you felt deeply fulfilled by something external? Have you ever pursued success only to feel emptier once you reached it? What if the very discomfort you feel around achievement is not a flaw, but a compass? A sacred reminder that your soul is here for a different kind of journey, not one of noise, but of meaning. Not one of chasing, but of remembering. What if the path that makes the least sense to others is the one that finally brings you home to yourself? Let us know in the comments. Have you ever felt punished for choosing peace over performance? Did people call you lost when in fact you were finally listening to your soul? Have you ever stood in a place for the first time and felt like you were coming home? Not just a déjà vu, but a deep, haunting familiarity that made no logical sense. A street in Paris, the curve of a mountain in Greece, a temple ruin in Cambodia. Suddenly, your heart stirs, your eyes well up, and something wordless within you whispers, "You've been here before." For the old soul woman, this isn't imagination, it is remembrance. In a world obsessed with logic and proof, few dare to admit this eerie connection. But if you've ever felt emotionally tied to a place you've never visited, a culture you've never lived in, or a time period that no longer exists, you are not alone. Many women in midlife begin to feel these mysterious pullings, especially when their rational mind begins to quiet and their soul's voice starts to speak louder. You might find yourself drawn to Celtic music, ancient Japanese rituals, or the architecture of Rome, and have no idea why it makes you weep. Yet you feel it anyway, like a home your body forgot, but your soul never did. Carl Jung called this archetypal memory, the idea that beneath your personal story lies a vast reservoir of symbolic history encoded in your unconscious. Jung believed that certain places, myths, and cultural elements resonate not because of personal experience, but because they touch universal themes already buried in the psyche. This explains why a woman in her 40s, who's never studied Egypt, might cry at the sight of a pyramid, or why a woman waking from a vivid dream of an ancient ritual feels shaken for days. It's not about where you've been in this life. It's about what your soul still remembers. As we mature, these memories often awaken, especially for those who feel emotionally detached from their current environment. When modern life begins to feel soulless, your psyche may instinctively reach back toward the symbolic, the ancient, and the sacred. You begin to long for places that value meaning over speed, community over competition, beauty over utility. This is not fantasy. It is your inner compass, trying to bring you back to forgotten parts of yourself. So let me ask you, have you ever stepped into a new country and cried for reasons you couldn't explain? Do certain eras, traditions, or landscapes stir something in you that feels older than memory? What if the places you've never been are not foreign, but fragments of who you once were? And what if these echoes are not meant to confuse you, but to guide you back to the wholeness your modern life has forgotten? Tell us in the comments, what's one place that has always called to your soul, even if you've never set foot there? Have you ever walked into a room and suddenly felt heavy, anxious, or inexplicably sad, only to realize none of those emotions were yours? For the old soul woman, this happens not once in a while, but as a quiet, constant rhythm of her existence. She doesn't just sense the atmosphere, she becomes it. Even when others wear smiles, she can feel the grief hiding behind them. Even when no one speaks, she hears the pain in the silence. In a world that praises emotional detachment as maturity, this sensitivity is often seen as a flaw. People may say you're too sensitive, too emotional, or that you feel too much. But what if this deep emotional permeability isn't weakness at all? What if it's evidence of a soul that remembers what most have forgotten, that we are not separate, that every person we meet is part of a larger whole, and their energy, whether joyful or wounded, passes through us like invisible weather? Carl Jung believed that the unconscious is not just personal, but collective, a psychic field we all live inside. This means that when others repress their sadness, it doesn't disappear. It moves, it shifts into the energetic space we all share. And those with deeper sensitivity, particularly women who have undergone emotional losses, awakenings, or soul fractures, become natural receptors of what others refuse to carry. Jungian psychology would call this an act of shadow absorption, when someone else's disowned pain becomes your inner ache. Not because you asked for it, but because your emotional system is open, tuned, and aware. Many women over 35 begin to notice this more intensely. They cry after phone calls that seemed normal. They feel exhausted around certain people without understanding why. They wake up heavy only to discover a friend is going through something unspoken. You may be the one who feels the collective pain during world tragedies, even when you try to avoid the news. And while this sensitivity can feel like a burden, it's also a powerful gift. It's the first step toward becoming a conscious healer, a mirror, a transformer of unconscious wounds. But the question is, how do you carry what isn't yours without letting it drown your spirit? How do you love deeply without losing yourself in other people's shadows? And how do you honor your capacity for empathy without turning it into silent martyrdom? Let's talk about it. In the comments, share one moment when you felt someone else's pain before they even said a word. How did it affect you? And how did you return to yourself afterward? Have you noticed that what used to shake your world no longer does? That is when others panic in the face of uncertainty. You somehow stay still, not because nothing touches you, but because something inside you has already been through the fire and made peace with it. For the old soul woman, chaos no longer signals disaster. It whispers transformation. There comes a time in a woman's life, often around midlife, when she realizes that she has already survived the worst. She's lost people she thought she couldn't live without. She's had doors slam that she thought would be her forever home. She's been abandoned, betrayed, humbled, and cracked wide open. And yet here she is, still breathing, still feeling, still standing. There's something unshakable about a woman who has faced endings not with bitterness, but with reverence for the sacred intelligence behind them. Carl Jung spoke of this inner shift as the transcendent function, the psyche's natural ability to unite opposites. It's the moment when pain no longer pulls you into fragmentation, but instead teaches you to hold two truths at once: the heartbreak and the breakthrough, the collapse and the rebirth. When you've lived enough lives in one lifetime, you stop clinging to false stability. You begin to understand that life, like the psyche, is not linear. It spirals, it descends before it rises, it breaks, so it can reconfigure something more real. This is why old soul women often carry a stillness that unsettles others. While the world is addicted to control, they've surrendered to rhythm. While others demand answers, they've learned to sit inside questions. While others fear death in all its forms, of relationships, of identities, of certainty, they've come to see endings as sacred thresholds. This is not apathy, it's awareness. It's the wisdom that comes when you no longer measure safety by predictability. In real life, this looks like trusting your path even when it makes no logical sense. It looks like choosing solitude over shallow connection, peace over performance, depth over drama. It looks like smiling quietly when someone says, "I don't know how you stayed so calm," because they don't see the decades it took to arrive at this inner still point. But you know, you've felt the fire, and now you carry its light. So let me ask you, what have you walked through that once terrified you, but now makes you stronger? When was the last time chaos knocked and you answered with calm? Share your story in the comments. Your courage may become someone else's compass. When was the last time you truly enjoyed your own company, not out of necessity, but as a conscious choice? In a world that constantly equates connection with presence and fulfillment with togetherness, there is something quietly rebellious about a woman who no longer fears being alone. For the old soul woman, solitude is not a punishment. It is her portal to peace. She has learned, often through years of energetic burnout and relational disillusionment, that being surrounded does not mean being seen, that a full room can feel emptier than a silent one, that a dinner table filled with noise can leave her hungrier than a quiet evening spent with a book, a candle, and her thoughts. She used to chase belonging. She used to tolerate surface-level conversations, shrink herself for harmony, or pretend to care just to avoid being the difficult one. But something shifted. Now she chooses her own presence over shallow company. She doesn't want noise, she wants nourishment. Carl Jung called this return to the inner world the withdrawal of projection, a pivotal moment in the individuation process where the energy once poured into pleasing others is reclaimed and redirected inward. This is not isolation, this is integration. In solitude, the old soul woman meets the parts of herself that society told her to ignore. She listens to the voice beneath the noise, the feeling beneath the performance, the longing beneath the roles she's had to play. She no longer waits for others to validate her worth. Her quiet space has become her mirror, her sanctuary, her truth. But this path isn't always celebrated. In modern culture, especially for women, solitude is often mislabeled. She's too guarded, too picky, too serious. But what if this silence isn't emptiness? It's sacred. What if her refusal to settle isn't arrogance? It's alignment. What if, deep down, you've always craved this kind of stillness too, but were taught to fear it? In real life, this means saying no to gatherings that drain your soul. It means recognizing that 1 hour of deep inner reflection can sometimes heal more than 100 conversations. It means no longer needing to be constantly available, entertaining, or understood. You realize that the deeper you go within, the more selective you become about what you let in. And in that selectivity, you don't become colder, you become clearer. So I'll ask you, have you ever mistaken loneliness for sacred solitude? Have you ever walked away from a crowded room only to finally feel like yourself again? Share your experience below. There are others who need permission to stop apologizing for needing space. Have you ever noticed how people soften around you, as if your very presence allows them to exhale something they've been holding in for far too long? There is something profoundly magnetic about a woman who has made peace with herself. She no longer demands the world to complete her, because she has touched the quiet center of her own being, and that energy radiates silently into every room she enters. While others chase validation, she emanates presence. Not the kind that needs to be seen or praised, but the kind that is felt. Her calm is not passive, it is earned. Her gaze is not just observant, it is witnessing. This is the kind of woman who no longer performs, who no longer fragments herself to be liked. And because of that, others feel inexplicably safe around her, as if the storm in their own chest pauses when they speak with her. Carl Jung spoke of this as the result of integrating the shadow. Once a woman has met her inner darkness, held her grief, embraced her rage, and learned to sit beside every exiled emotion, she no longer projects it onto others. She doesn't need to control, fix, or impress. She simply is. And that is what makes her feel like home to others, because she has become a home to herself. Her energy is not reactionary, it is rooted. In the real world, this shows up in small, sacred ways. Strangers confide in her. Children gravitate toward her. Friends call her when their world is falling apart. Not because she offers solutions, but because her presence reminds them of something they forgot. That they are allowed to feel, to break, to not have it all figured out. She doesn't offer empty positivity. She offers grounded being. She doesn't rescue, she reflects. And in that reflection, others begin to see themselves more clearly. But this presence comes at a cost. It is born of years spent unraveling old patterns, grieving unlived lives, and choosing truth over comfort. It is not soft because it is easy. It is soft because it has survived. So let me ask you this. Have you ever become the safe space you never had? Do others often say they feel calm just being near you, even when you say nothing at all? And more importantly, have you learned to extend that same gentleness to yourself? If this resonates, share how solitude and shadow work have shaped the way others feel in your presence. There's power in witnessing, and someone may need your words to remember their own. Have you ever found yourself in a room full of people, smiling on cue, nodding politely, yet feeling utterly invisible? It's not that you don't belong, it's that the mask no longer fits. The older you grow, the more allergic you become to anything that feels fake. You stop pretending that small talk nourishes you. You stop laughing at what doesn't feel true. You stop shrinking your soul just to fit into conversations that never touch the heart. There comes a moment in every old soul's journey when she realizes that superficiality is a form of starvation, the kind of hunger that numbs rather than feeds. She begins to crave something deeper, not attention, not validation, but connection, real, unedited, soul-to-soul connection. And this shift, though subtle at first, becomes irreversible. It marks the quiet death of performative living. Carl Jung would call this a return to the self. It is the moment the ego begins to step aside and the soul steps forward. You begin to ask different questions, not, do they like me? But, does this nourish me? Not, what do I say to impress? But, what truth needs to be spoken here? This is the inner reorientation that no longer allows you to betray your depth for the sake of belonging. And in today's world, that depth can feel like both a gift and a burden, because while others scroll, you reflect. While others avoid, you feel. While others chase quick validation, you long for slow truth. It's easy to feel like the odd one out in a society that rewards surface and punishes silence. But what if your discomfort with the shallow isn't a flaw, but a compass? What if your soul is asking you to stop diluting your essence just to be digestible? You may find yourself retreating from crowds, canceling plans that drain you, or choosing books over brunch. Not because you are antisocial, but because your spirit has outgrown noise. You want conversations that stir something ancient. You want a presence that feels like prayer. You want to be seen not as a persona, but as a person. So let me ask you, have you started to notice that certain people, places, or habits feel unbearable now, not because they've changed, but because you have? Have you found yourself unable to fake interest, unable to tolerate emotional shallowness, even when it's expected? And most importantly, are you willing to honor that shift without guilt? Drop a comment below if you've felt this transition. What used to entertain you but now leaves you empty? Your story might be the mirror someone else needs to remember their own depth. Have you ever wondered why you've always felt different, even in rooms where you were loved? Why does no amount of blending ever make you feel whole? It's not because something is wrong with you. It's because something in you refused to be tamed. Something ancient, something sacred, something that remembers. Being an old soul is not a quirk or a flaw. It is not a punishment or an excuse. It is a path carved not by the world, but by the soul itself. And walking means you were never meant to copy, conform, or chase the lives others handed you. You were meant to remember, to pull the thread of your true self out from under the layers you were told to wear. Carl Jung taught that individuation is the process of becoming who you truly are, not who you were conditioned to be, not who your family expected, not what society rewarded, but the self is whole, integrated, and rooted in the inner world. This is the quiet revolution of the old soul woman. She no longer seeks to fit in. She seeks to return to her essence. Return to her knowing. Return to the woman she's always been beneath the noise. That is why all the signs you've just seen are not coincidences. They are not random quirks of personality. They are soul markers. They are the whispers of your inner wisdom, reminding you that you are not lost, you are awakening. The reason small talk exhausts you, shallow company bores you, and solitude feels like home is that your soul has matured beyond what the world values on the surface. You are no longer asking, "How do I fit in?" but rather, "What is true for me now?" This remembering is not loud, it is not glamorous. It often happens in silence, in solitude, in small sacred choices. Saying no when you used to say yes, leaving rooms that require your betrayal, speaking your truth even when your voice shakes. This is not selfish, it is sacred. It is the shedding of what no longer resonates so that what does can finally take root. So if you've recognized yourself in these signs, take it as confirmation. You were never meant to walk the common path. You were meant to walk the real one, the raw one, the soul-aligned one. This is not the end of your journey. It's the beginning of living it consciously. Let this be your reminder. You weren't born to fit in. You were born to remember who you are. And maybe, just maybe, in doing so, you'll give others the courage to remember too. If this touched something sacred inside you, don't let it fade into silence. Like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Your presence here is not just support, it's resonance. And if you feel moved to give back, your donation becomes a quiet but powerful gesture that helps keep this light alive for others still walking in the dark.